So when this picture comes, just concentrate on the first one. If I ask this hall to tag this first question with one word, what will be that word? What will be that one word that can qualify this first picture? Racism? Is it racism?
Yes, sir.
Students, please, is it racism?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So in the second picture, let us see. So there is some discussion going on. It is obvious that it is some discussions are going on relating to a person who is least interested in it. So people are discussing something. The doctor is discussing with the words, and the person on whom the discussion is going on, he is feeling sidelined. His views are not taken, and he is having a sense of isolation. So, if at all this is happening, it is happening because of his advanced age. Yes or no? So when this is situation and the person is segregated or person feeling isolated or person is sidelined in the matter of his own rights and determination of his own rights, so he will be feeling sidelined. So what word you can give that is so closer to that racism? Anybody? Anybody that can give a word to this where a person is segregated or isolated based on his age? Ageism. That is racism. It is because of her or his age, it is ageism. So if this is the situation where the older, as the Dr. Swami sir was there, he told that the old persons are falling from the society, falling in the family, as well as falling on the ground. So I was very much moved by that word, because few of my discussions will be on those areas, how these older people, the people with advanced age, they are not having that rightful position in the society. People are thinking that they have lost their right, or you can say they have lived their time. They are less commonly discussed when their own affairs are in question. So this is not a very good situation. Is it a factor now? It's not a very good situation when people decide about your friend. And I am competent and people are not looking at me because they feel, the society members feel that I have lived my life. So I have lived my life. I am not economically viable or productive. I am somehow dependent on my family members and society. So that is why my rights will not be honored. So that is not a very happy situation. But the geriatric physicians, the family physicians who will be dealing with such patients, what we should do to uphold the dignity of this patient, to protect their rights, to safeguard their rights, and to make them feel honored and valued in the society. If a geriatric physician will not do that, who else will do? We are the trained physicians, we are dealing with dead people, and we have consistently seen that the dead's rights and voices are sidelined, and we have to come forward to give them their rights. So how we can give? What a doctor can do? What a physician can do in that situation? We have to ensure that I should speak directly, not to his words, but to the patient. I have to speak to the patient. I have to speak more often. I have to see that it is not unduly interfered by the family members, so that I can patiently listen to the voice of my geriatric patient. And it has been seen that at times we think that all old people are having some hearing defect. So it is a very common thing on the part of the common man as well as the doctor also to very scream loudly, and or we can say to utter the things loudly. So it may not be the situation every time, and it can also happen that at times we as a doctor become more sober. That if I want to address you, I will be thinking, oh, you young man, I know that you are not young, but I will be extra polite to say that you are a young man. So we think that you will be feeling happy. But it has been observed that it is not a matter of happiness, and the old man knows I am old. When you see caring young, he feels that I am being judged, I am being shown this sympathy. So this is not also a very good situation. So my assistant is there, Dr. Smokey, can you please read this case?
Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity. An 80-year-old woman presents with exertion-induced chest pain. Coronary angiography reveals 3-vessel coronary artery disease and a 90% stenosis of the left main coronary artery. The patient's cardiologist recommends medical and management rather than surgery.
So in this situation, do you think all doctors will behave equally, or few doctors can be having some prejudice and they can consider the age and use some conservative management? Is it possible, sir? Is it possible? So in this situation, what is the ideal behavior of the physician? Should I consider or should I make medical decisions based on the age, or the decisions should be made based on the medical indications? So that is an ethical issue, that is a legal issue, ethical issue, that in the mind, the values in the mind of the physician should not affect your decision making. Though the person is advanced age, that doesn't mean that I have to just write off his rights and I should not give him this this remedy. So I should not be making judgment based on the age only, but it should be based on the scientific, or you can say medical indications. So this is called as healthcare rationing. That means when our resources are limited, the policymakers, as the physicians, everybody, they may have an impression that the person is very old, why to waste resources on him, rather we should focus on the younger people or the younger generations so that they will be more productive in the future. This kind of belief, this kind of thoughts are not uncommon among us, and this, we believe, is an injustice to the dignity of the old. Do you agree with it or not?
Yes, sir.
So we should not be ignorant, or we should not be very much judgmental in this matter. And the justice in healthcare is every citizen's right. Justice in healthcare is every citizen's right, and the old man is still continuing to be a citizen of India, and he has every right. It is equal to the rights of the young. So based on his age, we should not be becoming stereotypic, prejudice, and this injustice to them. So this is the justice is a principle of bioethics. Justice is a very good and very powerful principle of bioethics. It says that justice should be done to all people, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, and age. And this is one of the principles of bioethics, four basic fundamental principles of bioethics. And this word elderly is not a very graceful word. If you say that old man, say Buddha Loka, like that we can speak. But that is not a very graceful word. And by that word, whenever a doctor is treating a patient, or so some old man has come, an advanced age, older age patient has come, in that situation it may so happen that just listening to the age of the person, it may creep in some bias in my mind, that I am going to take care of a patient whose value of life is not very high state. I can be complacent. I can think and do something less than the best I can do. So these kind of things, that means in the diagnosis also I may get preoccupied that the disease or whatever is going on might be related to her or his age. It may not be so, it may be acute condition. So I may think that, oh, old age, this pain goes on, so you have to just manage with it, go for physiotherapy. Those kind of preoccupation in the mind of a physician is quite possible and is happening, that the diagnosis can get affected just by the bias due to the age. In the same manner, the treatment also, the communication also, as a doctor, if the old man accompanied by his son or son-in-law is there, so we have seen physicians who feel comfortable to not to speak to the old man much, but to so what is happening with your father? So since when it is happening, so we straightforward negate the voice of the old. So this is again an injustice and assault on the morality of the person. And as physician, you have to stay away from this. You have to give dignity and the rightful position of the elderly in the society as physicians. So we cannot really make such first impressions and the bias which will affect our diagnosis, our communication, obviously, and the treatment plan. We may also rationing the available resources. And the last line, denial of healthcare based on age alone is a gross ethical violation. And we being the doctors to identify this ethical dilemma, and we have to really keep our professional behaviors in such a way that we should not be committing these unethical practices. So the message is that decisions as per the standard of care in medicine than the age. This should be the message of the practice of all physicians that deal with elderly people. So again, Smriti, please read out.
An 82-year-old woman presents with a palpable breast mass. Biopsy reveals breast cancer. The patient is seen by a surgeon who tells her that she needs surgery, hands her a consent form, asks her to read and sign it, and leaves the examination room. The surgeon's resident returns later to retrieve the signed form.
So what is the thing going on here? So what is that form? What is that form? Signed form. With signed form is your consent form. So what has happened? The senior surgeon hands over the form and asks the resident to go and collect the form. So where is communication? Is it informed consent? The surgeon himself should speak to the patient, discuss the situation, and the surgeon has also to assess if my elder patient is competent enough to understand the questions, know the risks and benefits, can comprehend the situation and make a valid choice or not. So that assessment is also a role of a physician or a surgeon. I cannot just leave it to sign the form. So this is the concept of informed consent. Informed consent means it is the exercise of the autonomy of the person. I am the person who will decide what to be done with my body. Nobody else can know if after you are a great surgeon, but you believe that this is good for me. If I am not convinced, I am not giving the consent and permission, if you are not legally competent to deal with my body. So that will be an assault if you contravene that right. So here the situation is the conduct of the doctor is not appearing very professional in the matter of how an informed consent should be taken and how the older man should be assessed, how autonomy should be honored. So capacity of self-determination and elements. So elements, whenever we are discussing some informed consent, we should be discussing with the. So it is not working. The dark out one is not working. So anyway. So as a doctor, it is our duty to discuss the nature. What are the proposed inventions? Not working. The blackout screen is not working. So I'll discuss the alternative and the informed refusal. Suppose a patient, after understanding everything, he decides that I will not undergo this surgery, even though as a surgeon you believe that it is needed. But still, honoring the wishes of the patient, you can avoid doing it, and it is not unethical, it is not legal or illegal. Please, next slide, please. So, Smriti, again, please read out.
A 79-year-old man with mild dementia has positive results on chemical testing of stool samples. His physician recommends colonoscopy. The patient understands and can repeat in simple terms the rationale for the procedure as well as its risk and benefits.
So in this situation, what is happening? So there is a patient who is having some dementia and the doctor is in a position and he is trying to assess the capability and capacity of the person to make a valid informed consent. So this is a very dilemma situation because at times it may so happen it becomes very difficult to assess, as Dr. Kaushik sir was telling in the first session. So having in this comprehensive assessment of geriatric people, this is also part of it. So the assessment of the mental capacity of the person to make choices. So that is the thing under discussion over here. So decision making capacity. The person's decision making capacity can be deteriorated in the advances because of these cognitive deteriorations, and it depends upon the thing should be put to the person. He should be able to conceive. Perceive. So he should be able to perceive. I should be having that no hearing difficulty, etc. to listen. I should be able to comprehend it. I should have that capacity to manipulate the information and make a choice from within, and I should be equally competent to express it. So there are many things. Somebody cannot perceive, somebody cannot express, somebody cannot reason and think. So there are many difficulties, cognitive difficulties that come in front of a geriatric practitioner while assessing the capacity of a person to make a valid choice. So for that reason, it is a very skillful and it is a very dilemma situation. And when we are dealing with the old man, and this old man is refusing a treatment, and this refusing of this treatment is low risk and life saving, over there it becomes more difficult for the geriatrician. So when this is the situation, the geriatrician should be more careful to vividly discuss the thing and try to take a positive consent because he knows that it is a low risk method and it is life saving. And beneficence. Beneficence is the word that is written over here. Beneficence means it is one of my biomedical ethical duties that whatever I will do good to my patient. I know that if it is rejected, it is going to harm her or him, but I have to, for that reason, I have to really ensure that I do everything possible to do good to the patient. Just by seeing that he is not agreeing to me, I should not abandon it. That is my moral duty. Confidentiality needs no discussion. Confidentiality, obviously, the older people are not very much privileged to have confidentiality because they are always accompanied by the family members. Whatever discussion goes on in front of everyone. And the old man at times may find it very difficult to share some sensitive issues, or if at all is there being abused in the hands of the family member, he can also not be able to speak out. So the geriatric practitioner also becomes a duty that at least steal some private time to talk to the, or some confidential time to talk to the elderly so that he can speak his mind out. It may be so happening that they are being neglected, they are abused in the hands of the family members. So if you are a geriatric practitioner, I don't arrange that private time so that distressed mind will not get the solace or the help he has comfort. So this again becomes, the duty of the physician becomes very ethically dilemma condition. So withholding and or withdrawing life-sustaining measures. This is a very complex issue. This is a very complex issue in the front of every practitioner who deals with these critical situations. So it becomes very difficult because at that time the person himself is not in a state to make a statement. And the decisions on behalf of him is taken up by the family members. And nobody really honors what he was, is the healthcare goals and his values of the person. And I take decisions from my father based on my values, what I think important. I negate the beliefs and the priorities of my father. So that is a very bad thing where what happens, the autonomy or the personal rights are really compromised, and a person is not allowed to have a dignified death, and unnecessary prolongation of death takes place, and he really suffers on the ICU bed without the presence of family members, and it is very stressful and very disappointing situation. So is it acceptable to the old man himself, or it is the decision of the surrogate decision makers, or you can say the family members? So that is a very dilemma issue, and informed refusal. Informed, considered refusal is ethical and legal, and we should not be fearful of this refusal, and acting against express consent is an assault. So a doctor doing something against the will and consent of the patient is against law, and we should be careful that we are never doing something that is outside the scope of the informed consent or the written consent. Even at the extension of the surgery also, if it is not documented, the doctors have been held liable for this. So we have to go fast, I am sorry. So, could we again read this case?
An 86-year-old widow with 3 adult children is hospitalized with pneumonia. Despite antibiotics and supportive care, the patient's pneumonia progresses and she develops hypoxemia and delirium. The patient's clinician recommends mechanical ventilation. Her youngest child, a nurse, as a surrogate decision maker, shows a handwritten wish of a mother reflecting refusal.
So just focus on this handwritten wish of her mother reflecting refusal. Her mother, when she was alive, she has expressed her wish that don't put me in those pipes and the beds and where all these connections are there. He has seen some things and he has decided that I should not be put in such situation, but he has expressed in a handwritten note. So what do you believe? This handwritten note, in this situation, should the physician honor this? So there is some problems from there. Both the mics are not working. Hello? Should the physician honor this handwritten note? Hello? Yes. Should the physician honor this handwritten note and execute this refusal? So we will discuss. So is it legally valid? So the answer is legally legally valid or not, we will discuss. So it will not be legally valid if it is not done as per the provisions of the law. But what is the hello? In advance, express some ways regarding the end of life care that I should not be put in ventilator, etc. So is it having legal standing? No. So what is the landmark decision? The landmark decision has come. So anybody can understand, identify this photograph. Who is it? Student? Yes, very good. This is the Aruna Sandbag case. With a north from the Mumbai. In this case, Supreme Court had a three-bench judgment, and they allowed passive euthanasia for the first time in India. This is a landmark judgment. Subsequent to that, a constitutional bench was held in the Supreme Court of India, and they come up with another legislation and another judgment. Hello? Subsequent to this judgment, the Supreme Court also had a constitutional bench, and they discussed on the end of life care issues. They thought that the human dignity should not be deteriorated to that extent that he will be allowed to not on the hospital bed what he had never liked to or wished to. So is it the way to award death to somebody, or it should be allowed to have a dignified death from within the family among the near and dear people? So that is a very classic case where autonomy, it is my autonomy, or you can say it is my constitutional right to live. The right to live also includes the right to live. So that judgment, so that is called the common cause judgment. Common cause is an NGO that has fought in the Supreme Court for the rights of the elderly, and the judgment came in 2018, 9th March. So what is the part of the judgment? What is the principle? It is subsequent to this. Actually, you can the living will in India, elaborate procedure was laid down by the Supreme Court of India. Let us stop this drama. Let us stop it. So Article 21. Article 21, it is the article in the Constitution that provides for the right to live. And the Supreme Court held that the right to live also includes right to live with dignity. That means when my natural death is approaching, I should be allowed to end my life with dignity. Nobody can tamper with my dignity and the sanctity of my life in my time of my incompetency. So the court has held those things. Every person dealing with the elderly man should have a clear idea what is the legal stand in India. And the indefinite continuation of futile life, obviously it is not a very legal matter. We cannot allow the people to rot on the hospital bed for months and years together without any hope of any recovery. And allowed under three situations. The court specifically wrote down. It will be allowed in three situations. Terminally incapable, suffering from restless conditions, and persistent unconscious state. In under only these three conditions, the person can be allowed to make a prior will that I will not be put into this state. So how it is executed? It is very complex. Execution of advance directive as laid down by the Supreme Court is very complex. Execution, how it will be done? The patient or the family members will initiate this process. They'll apply to the local JMFC. The local JMFC. The local JMFC, everything is written over here. Competent man, authorized agent execute. Two unrelated witnesses are there. That means he has to sign in presence of two unrelated witnesses, and it will be countersigned by the local JMFC, and the multiple hard copies will be made. And those hard copies will be distributed. One in the district court, one is the municipality office, one will be handed over to the family physician of the person. So it is very complex. Actually, the experts are doubting that can it be really implemented or can be practiced. And JMFC to inform the family, and one hard copy to the family physician and revoke it. If I make a wish now, it doesn't mean that the wish will be constant. After several years, I may also change my mind, and I may think of revoking my wishes. Another is implementation of this. When the suppose I am a living person, I expect that I may end up in a situation where I will be incompetent to make a decision, and I am not wishing to be put in this ICU and etc. Ventilator for longer days. So for that, I can start initiating when I am living and competent mentally. this procedure that we call the execution. But when actually that time comes when I have made an advance directive, what will happen? Obviously, I have lost my consciousness. I am not in a position, competent position to tell something. So what will happen? The family members will come forward with a advance directive to the doctor concerned. Once the doctor comes to know that in this case, an advance directive has already been executed, his duty is to immediately inform the local JMH that whether this advance directive is genuine or not. So genuine or not. The next thing is a medical board will be formed. The medical board will decide that in this case, continuation or mechanical ventilation, installation of mechanical ventilation to this will be non-productive or less likely to be successful. So in this case, these advanced life supporting systems are not expected to be effective. So the medical board will be formed, they will make a decision, finally it will be sent to the district collector will make another 3 doctor grades, they will also confirm this, after that it can be implemented. So it is very difficult but it is possible, and I expect that in this forum whoever are practicing with the geriatric people, they should be practicing it, and I think that if the Geriatric Society of India cannot make this awareness in the society that such a legal provision has come up since 2018, nobody can do, and very unfortunate to do that with the local or the public awareness, and even the awareness among the judicial people is very disappointing. People don't know that such a thing is there. So I expect that I request before this association or society that take up this cause and spread this news or spread this awareness in the society that such an advance directive has come. Let us practice it. Let us practice it. So in brief, time has gone. So I'm not reading here. There are situations, it is not needed. So there are situations where CPR has to be done or not. I was discussing with Dr. Pradeep, who is the chairperson over here, that what is the practice. So he says, so before doing CPR in any case, we are asking for the permission of the people if they are surrounding or they are accompanied. Without that, we are not doing. But unfortunately, the law says, or you can say the ethical principle and law says, that the CPR should be done as default if it is not denied to do. So as a routine practice, CPR is the right of every person that undergoes a cardiac arrest to receive the medical care, but it has to be done as a routine. But doing some incomplete CPR is also very morally wrong. Incomplete CPR means just for the showing to the people that we have done, it is also not good. And to take care of this situation where there may be situations where CPR should not be done. Is it a fact that CPR is always beneficial? At times, CPR really pushes the person to a very unfortunate condition where the brain death has occurred and the cardiac activities are scattered, and he will never have a very effective functional life, and he will be suffering like that for several years. So it so happens that in situations, CPR is not known to be very effective. So the treating physician has to identify that situation and discuss with the patient when he is competent to think and make a choice. So during life, and this is a thing. Advance directive is initiated by the patient. What this CPR, that is the ICMR consensus on the do not attempt resuscitation, is an action that is initiated by the treating physician. If I am taking care of an old man, I believe that CPR will not be beneficial. Prior and when it's competent, I will discuss with him or the family members that if at all there is a cardiac arrest, CPR possibilities are there, what are the risks of it, what are the benefits of it, what is going to be your quality of life subsequent to this, if at all you become successful with the CPR, all this will be discussed, and if the person concerned thinks against this CPR and he thinks that no, I should not be put into these things, rather allow me to die at the wish of the God, it should be respected. So this has not got the legal sanction. But ICMR has made such a consensus for the guidance of the physicians dealing with the situations of expected CPR. In the best interest of the patient, respecting his autonomy. In anticipation about its utility. It doesn't mean that withdrawal. So CPR means it is not withdrawal. It is about the if at all cardiac arrest takes place, it will not be done. And consider surrogate when it is the patient is incompetent. If suppose the patient is already incompetent, family members are there, and you still have an opportunity to discuss these things with the surrogate to undertake it, do not attempt resuscitation or surrender. And second opinion in case of conflict. So I'm sorry, So this only slides are I'll discuss. Whenever there is a dilemma, what a physician is expected to do. The physician is expected to do. Think about what are the medical indications. Does he need this? Does he need that or not? Yes, sir. Finish. Okay, sir. Then the present preferences. What the patient has expressed during his life. So has he clearly expressed his preferences? That we have to consider. Quality of life. In part of this life sustaining measures are instituted. Is it going to provide him a better life or it is going to compromise his quality of the life? And a contextual figure life. The resources, financial things, many things are there. So this has to be. So here I can conclude that we should be respectful to the right. Hierarchies, principles like autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance and justice should be honored. Better communication will improve our satisfaction. Dilemma will be limited. Dilemmas are dilemmas and answer to the dilemma is never one. And dilemma resolution is an art and practice. So thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Naik, for such a brilliant talk on this sensitive issue of ethical and legal issues in geriatric practice. Actually, we the clinicians are less literate regarding the legal issues. And with a changing society where the legal complications of every situation